All right, Stochastic, here we go. It's your old pal EMac coming to you on a Saturday morning here with one Matt Belman as we get ready for a little MLB. There's MMA today. There is an NHL game. There is one NBA game. We will, of course, be doing live before lock for that as well. Special 30-minute show, and we'll get you guys set up for playback as well. Matt, I was hanging around till like 12:30 last night in playback, watching the NBA games, and I had a couple little sweats going on for MLB. Ended up winning 7 tickets to either the $20 DraftKings NFL Best Ball or the $25 Millionaire Maker for the NBA Finals. So that was a fun night. Plus, I won a few hundred in cash as well. So good times. I'm riding high. Little tired though. Only 5 hours of sleep last night.
Hey, let's ride, man. I will say, I thought of you when the Royals went off late. I know you liked them, and I have a feeling that was probably a big reason why you were successful, if it was in fact an MLB.
That was it was kind of fun. It was kind of fun. A few things broke through. That's the key with baseball.
Was it the Royals?
From on Yahoo, it ended up being the Padres.
Okay, yeah.
Mostly Tatis. And then a lot of my stuff in winning those ticket contests, because basically those are winner take all. It was the Royals, a lot of Royals teams, because not as many people went to them in that particular format as we thought. So there we go. Tommy David says, "Hey, EMac, as we get older, we need less sleep." Or we just take naps, because that is a key thing that will probably be happening today for me here. We've got some fun here. We will talk, of course, the slate that's locking at 105, and then we'll also give you some picks for the evening slate on DraftKings and FanDuel. They are going with I think it must be a 5 or a 6 game slate. They're going in the 6 o'clock hour. Yahoo is going with 1 game less than that, and they're not going until 7 o'clock. So it's a little bit smaller of a slate, and then of course 7 o'clock lock or tip off for NBA. So we've got a lot of fun here. We've got a lot of fun. So we're having fun. I see Eat My Shorts is getting a little spicy. Hey, come on. This is free stuff here. And we're bringing the energy. We're bringing the knowledge. Enjoy. Shout out there to Jake Swales. He is a regular here. Stephen Leibowitz. Happy Evaldi Day the other day. And then, oh yes, Lone Wolf. We're gonna talk about Fetty, because I don't know what to do with him. He is now working on voodoo magic. But we've got some fun going here. There are some weather concerns, so let me go get that. It's kind of scattered. There are a few places that are going to be experiencing rain, but they're across multiple slates. So key thoughts here are in the early action. Pittsburgh and Washington look like they could be impacted, which is going to be important because you've got Kevin Gausman going against the Nats, and then you have Jones going against the Rockies, who are in Pittsburgh. The featured slate looks like there's, for later tonight, looks like there's going to be precipitation in Cincinnati. That's going to be a key one because we've got Baltimore in that fun little launching pad there. I think there will be a window to play that after. They may have to wait a little bit, but based on what the forecast look like now, there would be more. And then you guys can check out your usual DFS meteorology resources. There are a few other games that have potential for precipitation in the forecast, but it doesn't look like anything could cancel any of the games. But there could be in-game delays, and we never know what's going to happen with Mother Nature, so I don't pretend to be a weather person here. Pitchers. We mentioned a couple weather spots here. Let's analyze this as if there is no weather issue. Matt, what do you like on your main slate pitching, or the afternoon main slate pitching?
Tough to analyze without at least acknowledging the weather issues, but you just did that. So, I won't even take it any further because we can only talk about the weather so much, right? Like, we're not weathermen. The game's not for 4 hours at this point. So we'll see. If the game goes as scheduled, I think Jones looks like the best pitcher on the slate. I mean, he's been phenomenal so far this season. Elite strikeout upside. And it's just a matchup here. You get the Rockies at home. Like, certainly if the matchups were even, give me the pedigree of Pablo Lopez over Jarrett Jones. Like, we just know who Lopez is. But the matchups are not the same. Boston is one of the best hitting teams against right-handed pitching right now. The Rockies are not. So while weather is a real concern here, Jones looks like the top dog if everything goes. And yeah, I think there's a bunch of good pivot options that are under him, but I do think he's the top option. How about you?
I was going to write him up and have him be the top option. And it just, when you do these all day articles and you want to let them have some shelf life, etc., I ended up just doing a footnote for both him and Gaussman saying, hey, they're probably the top two pitchers. I'm writing this at 8 a.m. I don't know what's going to happen. So I left that deal out, other than making mention that they definitely would be in the perfect world. They would be the ones that are there. The key thing about Jones is he's got really, really good strikeout stuff, but he also has a high walk rate and he allows home runs. Now, those two haven't come together yet this season. He's had the walks or he's had the home runs in games, but he can be walking a fine line. I don't think that is anything to make us go away from him against the Rockies. But if this was a middle of the road team, it would be a little bit more of a concern. Similarly with Gaussman, he has not been his fireballing self per se, but he's sort of riding the ship. And he gets to go against the Nationals, who have been pesky, but it's entirely done with smoke and mirrors for that team, because they have like 2 or 3 major league caliber hitters, and everybody else is either hurt, who would be like a replacement level, so they're playing with below replacement level players. So even though they've struggled, even though Gaussman struggled a little bit, I would not be worried about him against the Nationals. But that brings us to Lopez. Lopez has struggled somewhat this year, and it has not been implosions. It's just been a consistent like 4 or 5 earned runs in each of his last few starts. That is that more concerning than, he got his ass kicked 3 starts ago, but he's righted the ship since, or he had 3 good starts and got his ass kicked in the last one. I don't know. I get a little nervous when someone's continually giving up runs like that. It shows that it could be bad unfortunate hit sequencing, but it also shows that there's probably not as many strikeouts, and he's probably not getting the ground balls that he needs to get out of those innings. Those could fix themselves, but it's starting to be a little bit of a concern here. We're starting to see a trend develop, and the trend is not our friend at the moment. What were your thoughts on Lopez here?
I agree with you. The trends are not our friends. It's not our friend right now. I'm a poet and I didn't even know it. That said, like, his underlying numbers are a lot better than his actual numbers. So he's sitting right now with a 4.83 ERA. That's not good. A 2.97 expected ERA, though. So that's more in line with the Pablo Lopez we know. I'm with you. I don't feel warm and fuzzy about Lopez here. As I just mentioned, Boston is really, really good against right-handed pitching. They're terrible against lefties, but really good against righties with how their lineup's set up right now. So it's not a safe spot, but no weather issues. He is the best quote-unquote pitcher on the slate. So, yeah, I like Lopez here, despite it being a risky spot.
All right. So as you're looking through the tools, since those are posted here, what are you seeing here with the guys at the top across DraftKings and FanDuel? What are you interpreting, as we're about an hour away from the first game, and then we have a little bit of a wait till the next few on the slate hit?
What I'm seeing is, and I think this is going to hold, Jones and Lopez are going to be by far the 2 highest owned pitchers on the slate. I think the weather in Pittsburgh right now is just a concern. That's it. So I don't think that people are not playing Jones, at least right now. And then Lopez, it's pretty easy to fit both of them with some cheap bats on today's slate. So they look like the easy top 2 guys. Clark Schmidt coming in 3rd in the top pitcher tool and 3rd in ownership. I get it. Pretty cushy spot at home against Detroit. I'm not a big Schmidt guy. I don't dislike him here, but I don't love him either. The other guy that I like is Paul Blackburn. Again, not excited about it. He's so cheap in such a good spot in a great ballpark. I like Blackburn quite a bit. What do you see?
So Blackburn is someone I like. Greg hates. So whenever we talk about them, we're always taking sort of opposite sides there. And it's funny because you can interpret the numbers essentially, and both of us are correct and both of us are incorrect. He's kind of on that fine line. Injuries have derailed him for about 6 of his 8 or so seasons that he's been in the league. And it's not, some were serious and some were just run-of-the-mill things. So he never seems to get a good sustained level of work where he can be consistent. But in a matchup like what he has going for him today, that is something where we picking on his opponent is going to be a key one. Did they finalize that trade yet? I wasn't paying attention.
They did this morning.
Okay. All right. So what did that end up? And for those that don't know, Miami was in the process of trading Luis Arias, which is wild because I don't know why they would want to do that. What did they end up getting for him?
They got 4 prospects. I'm not even going to try to pronounce half their names. So decent return for Miami. No elite prospects back, but 4 guys that could potentially be major leaguers. So I think they probably sold a little short. I love the move for San Diego, but maybe, San Diego has often given up too much in deals like this. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, well, San Diego, here we are talking about something else, but it's baseball and it will be applicable. So San Diego, of course, needed to kind of replace Juan Soto in some form or fashion here. It's clear that Tatis is pretty much going to be the outfielder or the DH at this point. No more infield love for him. Machado is more or less third baseman. So they, and they've got Kim that kind of swings between second and shortstop. So getting another infielder, middle infielder is a good idea. You got a 2-time batting champion coming to your team. While he doesn't have a ton of power, he can get on base, and he gets on base in front of those guys that do have the power. It's a good fit for the Padres, and it definitely improves their lineup. It's just guts the Miami lineup at this point. He was, him and Jazz and I'm blanking on the switch hitting Josh Bell. I mean, they're kind of the main guys when Avi Garcia isn't around either. Because remember, they got rid of who was it, Soler, and anybody else that has a modicum of power or ability is long gone. Cooper's gone, etc. So Miami now just moved up the charts of a team we're going to be picking on, even more so than we had been. But it is what it is. So circling back to Blackburn, I like him as an SP2. I think he's always a good salary saver. He doesn't quite ever get enough strikeouts to make you happy, but when you start to go look at his numbers, he usually doesn't get his ass kicked either, which is also important, especially on DraftKings and Yahoo, where you have to play 2 pitchers. And there are some sub-slates today as well where he could come into play here. What else? Let me get to
I think the other guy we should talk about is the guy you mentioned, Fetty.
I was trying to delay it, but here we go. So clearly when he was in Korea, he had somebody cast a spell on him, perhaps give him a potion of some sort that has enabled him to get strikeouts. And I have said bad things about him now for his last 3 starts. I think in his last 2, what doesn't he have, I don't know if it's game log up, but something like 20 strikeouts in the last 2 games, survived something insane like 14 fly balls. Really? If that's not black magic at work, I don't know what it is. Here, I'm going to be going against him because I have a personal vendetta with him after watching him suck for so long with the Nationals. But I got tired of writing him up because then I get egg on the face twice. Now I got to lose when I'm attacking him with bats, and then I got to look at my article the next day and say, why the hell did I talk about this guy again? So I'm after you, Fatty. I'm just not officially on the record, although this is recorded for posterity. So I guess I am. I can't buy it. But at this point, if he ends up on 15% of my lineups on DK, I don't care, because this Crash Davis once said you got to respect the streak, and there is something going on right now that is unexplainable, in my opinion.
The thing that's encouraging for me, and I talked about him a bunch at the beginning of the year, is how dominant he was in the KBO last year. I know that you certainly can't look at that and say, oh, well, he's that good now. But he's definitely, like, unquestionably, undoubtedly a different pitcher than he was when he was with the Nationals. So like to look at his, baseball savant page and to look at his FanGraph stuff and just look at his numbers from before he went to the KBO, I think that's a little bit of a fool's errand. Now, I don't think you need to just cross that stuff out because it is relevant. I still think we don't know who Fedde is. Right now, a little bit surprised that St. Louis is the number one top stack on the board here, considering how good Fedde has been. I'm with you, though. Like, I'm not buying completely what he's selling, and I am waiting for the other shoe to drop. But I don't have as much interest in the Cardinals here as the tools would indicate. I don't love Fedde here either. Not a great spot for either side. Is St. Louis a team you're looking at stacking pretty heavy today?
It is. They're in the mix. So I talked about them last night. Really, really like them. And you had the counterpoint. Yeah, they're kind of old. They're more or less struggling. I'm going back to them, but I thought, even as much as I'm not a fan of Fedde and as much as I like the Redbirds, I thought that was kind of a lofty total to see there. Last I looked, it was like a 5 or a 5.1 implied run total there going against Fedde. And I don't, it's a both sideser, I guess, which welcome to baseball. That is just in some situations, that's just what it's going to be. If this was July, August, and it was hot and we were getting the humidity, et cetera, we'd be, the run totals would be even a little higher. To me, it almost feels, for the way Fedde's been pitching, the way that Cardinals have been hitting, that 5-run total is generous. It's like, oh, this is a 90-degree day with 75% humidity, and it's not. So it was just, that one popped out for me. As I knew you'd call that out as well. That was just a surprise to see it that high. I thought like 4.7 is a little more appropriate. But we're splitting hairs here. But once you get to 5, it's like, oh, stacking time, regardless of who the opposing pitcher is. Lance Lynn, the venerable veteran.
I came into this slate thinking I was going to be real high on Lance Lynn, and I don't dislike him here. I don't like him as much as I thought I would. It's just a spot against the White Sox. And while I'm fine going with any pitcher against the White Sox, just don't like it as much with a guy like Lynn this week as, the White Sox might have looked a couple weeks ago. And just Lynn is fine, but I can't get excited about it. And I'm probably not going to play him, even though he's definitely in the mix. Do you have a stronger take on him? I'm sorry, I don't.
No, I do. And it's because I was doing the weather discount. So I wanted to ride him up. I wanted to look at this just a little bit more because remember, he was so bad last year. He had a 2.1 home runs per 9 when he was with the White Sox. Then he went to the Dodgers, and I think it went up to like a 2.3 home run per 9. I know for the year he ended up with about a 2.2. That's well above his career average, well above anything we've seen. And, he's kind of been a power pitcher, but he is just, let's see, where's my notes here? So he's going to be 37 next Sunday. He had the 2.2 home runs per 9, but we want to remember that his worst year prior to that was just 1.4, and that was in 2022. And in 2021, he was an all-star and 3rd overall in the American League Cy Young voting. So even though he's on the older side, even though he had a rough year last year, I think he's still got enough talent and strikeouts. Now he's going to throw basically 2 versions of his fastball. There is no fooling these hitters. It's more about movement, location, and inducing some weak contact if in fact he can't strike people out. And I remember one of his starts last year, I recommended the under on his strikeouts. He had like a personal high 14 strikeouts, and he also had more swinging strikes in that game than anybody in the league to that point. And it's just like, really? The guy who's been pitching batting practice all of a sudden shoves it in my face. The one time I'm like, yeah, we're going against you, buddy. And it's just like, I don't know what to do. He's back. I don't know that he's in my good graces, but he has had some matchups against weaker offenses. So I think he's good. He's someone to get a little nervous about when he goes against the top 10 offenses, though, just because we saw he got hit on the screws pretty bad last year. I think other offenses can get to him. I am okay with him today. 3.5 implied run total. The only people that are from the left side, that's his biggest issue, is lefty powers. Gavin Sheets, who should not be hitting cleanup for any team, yet here he is for the White Sox, and then Benintendi. But Benintendi's been in a major slump, and I can't remember if he had got a third home run, but he had like no home runs, then had a 2 home run game, and then just went back into irrelevance again. So those things there's enough on the little tiny ticks on the positive side of the ledger there for Lance Lynn that I'm landing there. And excuse me, weather is kind of the biggest factor.
I get it. His underlying numbers aren't good. Again, right now he's got a 2.64 ERA. The expected ERA is 4.50. So I do think regression's coming, but why would it come today against the White Sox? So he's definitely in the mix. I don't think there's any question about it.
All right. Hopefully, chat. Let me know. I closed out the chat window. I've got it open again. Let me know if that helped out with the volume. I've noticed that when we change different producers or I go into different Zoom rooms, it resets my volume for some reason. So we had different login room last night. So my apologies for that. I should have checked that right off the bat. But you know what we do want to check, Matt? We want to check for some ways to make some money. So one way to do that would be to go to our presenting sponsor, Better, because over at Better, you can double your first deposit up to $500. There are only 2 places out there doing this right now. Better is one of them. You probably don't have an account at Better, and you better go get one. That is Better at BETR. See what I did there? Dad jokes for the win. The key things you need to know over there, it is the Pick'em site. They've got NBA, MLB, NHL, variety of other sports. It's a lot of fun over there. You get, you don't have to worry about ties. Some of the Pick'em sites do round numbers. They don't. So you're always going to be on one side or the other. They do have dynamic pricing, so where some of the sites like that don't, and that's why they go with the ties on occasion with 6 strikeouts, and then their card is just a push, and they remove that out of the card. It doesn't mean you lose; it just doesn't mean it counts for anything. But they have more dynamic pricing or values if you get things correct. You have the opportunity, if it's leaning in your favor, you get a little less credit for it. If it's in their favor, you get a little bit more credit for it. But that's over at Better, and they do have an app. So I know a lot of you youngsters like to use the apps. For me, the damn screen's too small. I'm at that point here where I'm going to have to learn how to use the iPad. But in any event, we'll set that aside. But one last thing: the legal age for gambling in most states is 21. And if you or anyone you know has a gambling issue, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. See what kind of picks and advice they can give to you. All right, Matt, does that take us through all of our viable pitching options here for this early slate?
I think so. It's a small slate anyways. A couple guys just have no real interest in playing at all. So yeah.
Let's talk about that guy. Would that be Jameson Taillon, who has forgotten how to throw strikes this season, it feels like, in his first couple of games? Have you noticed his game logs? That's going to correct, but he's like throwing strikeouts at half of what he has done in prior years.
I had not noticed that, but what I'll say about this slate is all the pitchers that look like they should be getting ownership are Jared Jones, Lopez, Schmidt, Gaussman, Lynn, and Blackburn. They're all going to be owned a decent amount to a significant amount, Jones and Lopez specifically. Everyone else, Eric Fetty, Taillon, Myers, Gomber, Irvin, Mize, and Anderson, aren't going to be owned. So if you want a contrarian option, you have your pick with all those guys. I left one guy out. That's Trevor Rogers. He's falling in the middle. He's not unowned, but he's not going to be really owned. He's coming in at 10%. So he's the one guy I still think, most people aren't going to play him. So he belongs in that second group. But it is like very split, and it makes sense why it's split.
All right. Let's have some fun here as we flip over to offenses here. So you've got essentially a bullpen game for Boston. So Boston's got Brian Bello, Garrett Whitlock, and Nick Pivetta. They're all on the injured reserve. They all should return this month. Most of them will probably be back in the next 10 to 14 days. So these are not lengthy absences. Two of them are going out on rehab assignments right now. One of them, it looks like it could be a little longer than the other. So but that's not really helping today. It looked like it was going to be Brennan Bernardino potentially as the opener. That's what some sites had earlier today. He will probably pitch today. There's two lefties in the bullpen. He is one of them, but he is probably good for 4 or 5 outs tops. He typically doesn't go over 20 pitches. So I was kind of surprised people were listing him there because I didn't think they'd burn a lefty right away when they only have 2. So Chase Anderson is now appearing to be the listed starter here. We're not going to want to roster him. He is, failed starter at a few different stops here. This season, he has 14.2 innings with a 5.52 ERA. You've got Chris Martin, 12.1 innings, 5.1 ERA. Wouldn't surprise me if somebody they get a call up that we're not aware of or whatever. They have trimmed off some of their crappy relievers like Joely Rodriguez, Isaiah Campbell, Joe Jocks, but that still has Cam Boozer and Justin Slayton are up with the big club right now. So if you look at their current relievers versus their bullpen for the entire season, it's not a good comparison because those other 3 guys that they bounced with, Rodriguez, Campbell, and Jocas, they were really weighing that down. Not that these other guys are great shakes, because most of you should be saying, who are these guys again? So that has I'm assuming we have the Twins lineup. I had to close a bunch of stuff out here.
We do.
Do we have your favorite switch hitter in the lineup?
My favorite switch hitter, who would that be?
Willie?
Yeah, Willie Castro's in there hitting 3rd.
Oh, that's a promotion. He was 6th in a few of the projected lineups I was looking at this morning. So he is batting 3rd. Carlos Santana ended up batting 6th. Kepler is batting 5th. Julian at the bottom of the order. But when you've got a bullpen game, the key things to remember are it used to mean bad pitching, right? The leftovers, the guys that couldn't hack it as a starter. That's all changed over the last 7 or 8 years, right? You got tons of guys that are throwing in the upper 90s. They're going to come in for a few outs and an inning and 2 innings tops, and then they're going to cycle back to AAA or whatever it needs to be. So it's not quite the same as it once was. This is an imbalanced bullpen. They only have the 2 lefties. Everybody has been off with the exception of one guy did go back to back, but everybody else has been, or pitched on 2 consecutive days. Everybody else has been off since Thursday. So they have fresh-ish arms. That's where when you've got Castro and Santana, even though they're not the best hitters, they're gonna have the platoon advantage no matter what. And that's where if they had started Bernardino again, and I still can't find full if he's going to be the full starter, but I thought we'd see Manny Margot in the lineup, but he would be a pinch hit risk for the likes of Trevor Larnack, or if Kepler wasn't in the lineup, it'd be Kepler, etc. So I like the way this lineup is setting up. They're going with their solid righties. Unsung hero, Ryan Jeffers. Where did this guy come from? He hits lefties, he hits righties, he's a catcher. This magic has happened over the last 18 months, and I wasn't paying attention until this season. I missed out on grabbing him in the late rounds on some of my season-long teams. I wish I would have got him because he's been pretty good. So up and down the lineup, the Twins not spectacular because they got Buxton on the injured list, and I'm blanking on their rookie from last year who's their 3rd baseman, but he's been out for a while too. But going against the Mia bullpen, I like the Twins. Long way of saying I like the Twins, and they're not going to break the bank, which is
Twins look good here. I do think the pinch hitting risk is real. Bernardino is not a full starter, so I'm sure it is a bullpen game here. But you got guys like Julian already in the lineup, so yeah, I think I like the Twins more as one-offs, mini stacks because of that. But I do think that they're wildly in play here. In any sense of how you want to use them.
And then the other guy that I started poking around with was Casey Miz, or Mize. I always forget how to pronounce his name. He was the number 1 pick. He was right around the pandemic or right before the pandemic. He missed a season with Tommy John. He had some other injury that knocked him out of one of the seasons, but he was a top prospect. As such, I was not excited about the Yankees today. even though they're basically going out with their, at this point, their best lineup is on the field today, or at least their top 7 is part of their best lineup. But I felt like I don't have an advantage either way here. To me, that game's kind of a stay away, because at first I went in, I'm like, oh yeah, we're gonna go against this kid here. Look at his numbers; he's hardly been in the leagues. And then you're like, oh well, he's hardly been in the leagues because he's been hurt, and I forgot he was the number 1 pick, because I always get him and who was it, Torkelson, and Detroit just has. They're a hard luck franchise, is what we'll say there, the Motor City Kitties. But this was almost a cross them off game for me. If I get the optimizer, or if the Sims gives me some of these guys, I'm okay with it. But otherwise, I wouldn't. If I was hand building, I wouldn't be putting anybody in from that game, pitchers or hitters. Do you feel like that, or is there any other games where you're kind of like, this is a coin flip and I don't want either side, as opposed to, okay, I'll take a little of both sides, right?
I don't like the Yankees here. I think I like them a little bit more than the field. I don't love them. The top stacks don't love them, but they're not getting a ton of ownership. We know the power this lineup has. Mize has been so inconsistent since he was drafted first overall out of Auburn, was a really good college pitcher, has not put it together in the pros. He's showed signs, but I think this Yankees lineup isn't play against anyone, and certainly Mize is no exception. Small slate. They're not getting love. Again, they're the 6th or 7th highest owned team on the slate. I'll take this high upside Yankees in spots like this, even though I know the weather's not great and there's other teams in better spots on paper. I think I like the Yankees a little bit more than the field. But if you're asking me if there's games where I'm just kind of dismissing both sides, definitely the Blue Jays Washington game is one of them. I don't really like much from that game to begin with. Also add weather concerns. I'm off that game.
All right. Now let's unveil some of the stacks. So we kind of like the Twins. I'm okay with calling them a secondary or 2-man, 3-man type options there. But as you look here at the rest of the things, the tools are just jumping off the page for the Cardinals, for Toronto, and then Chicago as well. So Tobias Myers, he is someone I wrote up that we can go against today, and for him, so this is just the 3rd start of his career in the show. He's 25. He was drafted out of high school in the 6th round by Baltimore. Since then, he has played in Baltimore's minors, Tampa Bay's minors, San Francisco's minors, Cleveland's minors, and Chicago. The latter 2 teams both cut him, and Milwaukee claimed him after the White Sox released him. He has been in 140 minor league games, 123 starts, 618 pitches. Nothing great down there that shows anything good. He has 2 5-inning starts here. He's allowed 3 home runs, 5 earned runs, 9 strikeouts. But my vote of confidence is for Happ, Morel, and Bush. And then after that, it's like, well, do I really need a 4-man stack? I prefer Nico Horner against lefties. Mike Tauschman, he's okay. Dansby Swanson, prefer him against lefties. But I like the other 3 guys a lot in this matchup. So maybe this is a true double stack day, and that's something I've gotten away from, Matt, especially using the Sims, because you get the way that works, you're getting a lot better one-offs and different leverage points here, and the ROI, because you have more unique lineups, is more advantageous when you are getting the 5-man stacks and then letting it take care of everything else, rather than forcing that 4-4, that 5-3 thing. Those still make up about a third of my lineups, but over half my lineups are just 5-man stacks without forcing that in. So to me, it looks like maybe today could be a better 4-4 day. If I kind of like the Twins, I kind of like Chicago, those would be the 2 I'd be building my hand build lineup around. What do you think about the Cubbies in this matchup?
I like the Cubbies here. I'm not exactly sure what to make of Myers. I think that the writing's still on the wall for him. Like, he's just
a lot of teams have not been sure what to make of him, but they've passed.
Yeah, very true. I mean, they look good here. They have the 3rd highest top stack percentage on the board. already mentioned that I don't love teams like St. Louis and Toronto getting the ownership. So, yeah, the Cubs look very good to me. Both sides of this game, the Cubs and the Brewers, I think look like two of the top, 3 or 4 stacks on the board. Neither of them are in certainly can't miss spots, but they both look very good in their own right. No doubt about it.
Yeah. And that I'm curious to see. So I haven't done a real weather slate here with our stacks tool. So I'm curious to see how it handles. Or with the Sims tool. I love it with baseball for basketball with the late swap. It's phenomenal. You just kind of go in, hit the button, and then it gives you the best of everything. And you can tell it, go a little more chalky or a little less chalky, but you're like, oh, wow, that's exactly what I want. For baseball, the challenge of late swap has always been, it's a bitch to keep your stacks intact if you're building out 150 lineups. And even if you keep the settings in stacked, it's constantly putting in the players that you don't want anymore, or leaving $1,500 on the table. That leaving $1,500 on the table, that's something I've noticed the Sims do. So I now go in and filter out to all lineups on DraftKings that have 49,000 or higher salary cap. I don't think it's in baseball. I mean, we've talked about this before. The optimal lineup probably every day probably leaves $6,000 on the table because you're just picking everybody who hits a home run, or duos and trios that get that synergy. But I just can't stand looking at it and saying, well, yeah, I know I asked for a 4-man stack, but I'd rather not have the 8-hitter and leave $2,000 on the table. I'd rather have a one-off and spend that $2,000 on whoever that one-off is, even though they can go 0 for 4. And then you get into where's the synergy? Is that smart? Is it not? So it's the age-old battle in your mind.
I don't think there is a right answer to that.
I don't either. But using the Sims has opened my eyes to a lot of things that we thought were tried and true in DFS, both football, basketball, as well as baseball now.
For sure.
And it's one of those things where having these tools, being able to run something, behind the scenes 10,000, 40,000 times, whatever it's doing, it's giving you more and more slates under your belt to kind of figure out, so what we thought wasn't good actually is good, because we were only really focusing on the good results of that particular format or team build or roster construction, and not missing out that, oh shit, all those times it ends up at the bottom, when if you would have just done it this way, you'd be closer to the top. So it's an interesting thing. So anyway, that's Sims tool. We've got the lineup generator. Lineup generator is like Sims Lite. You get in a much better price point. We build that out for the main slates, both for FanDuel and DraftKings. You can set your stacks types, contrarian, balanced, or chalky, or pick all of the above. You can pick specific stack types or accept all stacks. DraftKings would be 5-3, 4-4, and 5-0. FanDuel would be 4-4, 4-3, and 4-2-2. You can lock in one pitcher. You can lock in a hitter, and then build out around that. But that has a pretty palatable price point. It's just over a couple bucks a day to get that in, and it's something that's very, very helpful. And it helps you both as a hand builder. It sort of helps you with the parameters, and then you can go in and tweak specific one-offs that you like once you kind of see what a good core really ends up being. And it's leveraging all those tools that the Sims are, the boom bust tool, the leverage, expected outcomes, variable outcomes, all that fun stuff. So anyway, that's the lineup generator. All right, do you have a vote of confidence for any other offense here on our early slate?
Team that I like quite a bit that's not getting ownership is Pittsburgh. Domber stinks. The Rockies bullpen stinks. Got Yasmani Grandal back from the IL. Not that that's major, but it's something. I like Pittsburgh here. I think they're falling through the cracks. Really like the matchup. I think weather and pricing and other teams looking good are keeping people off them. They're my tournament stack of the day, at least as of right now.
You know what's funny is the other day, because I like to try to figure out the answer without looking. I was trying to remember, excuse me, if Grandal was even in the league. So answered that question, but I was like, no, he's not with the White Sox. He's not with the Brewers. He's out. The Dodgers was a million years ago. God, is that guy even in the league? Guess what? He is. He is. He's unlike Miguel Sano. He did not get banished there for a season. Who would be your core four of that stack?
I think we're looking at the top four. There would be my core four with McCutchen, Reynolds, Hayes, and Honor Joe, who's a notoriously good lefty hitter. again, they're not like the highest upside foursome on the board, but they're pretty damn good. And they're not getting a ton of ownership. Great matchup. I like that foursome quite a bit, to be quite honest.
Right. Who else is there? Is there anybody? Or should we do home runs? And chat, we're going to talk a little bit about the night main slate, since we don't have a show for that. We'll cover that a little bit as well. Any stones that have been unturned here?
Yeah, I mean, I always think that there's places to go on slates like this when you don't have like clear stacks, and teams like St. Louis are getting a lot of ownership. How about Oakland? Trevor Rogers has been pretty meh. This lineup is better against lefties. They've actually been decent. Like, their offense hasn't been amazing, but they've won 5 in a row, I think. Since they started off like 2-7 or 2-9, they're like a better than 500 ball club. Again, I'm not buying that they're a 500 team going forward, but they've showed signs of life recently, and they're playing Miami. So I think Oakland kind of fits into the Pittsburgh type of stack. I also much prefer going to teams in Oakland during the day. So Oakland would be the one other one. Actually, the other one that I want to bring up that I think you have to, as far as our tools go, is the White Sox. Big reason I'm not as high on Lynn. I mean, the White Sox have basically the same top stack percentage as the Yankees here. So that tells you a lot. They're really cheap. You don't need it, but if you want to roster Jones and Lopez, the White Sox are a really easy way to make that work. So, yeah, I thought I'd be more on the Lynn side, but I'm not. I'm more on the White Sox side.
So it sounds like you're okay with Pittsburgh. Is weather taking you totally off of the Toronto?
Yeah, okay, so I don't think the weather situations are all that different, but I think that, like, I don't love Toronto at that ownership if it plays. I like Pittsburgh a lot if it plays, so it's just like a risk versus reward thing for me. I could get off Pittsburgh if the weather looks bad. I'm not like going to sell my soul to play them. I just don't like Toronto because of the weather and because they're already getting ownership, if that makes sense.
Okay. That's totally fair. That's totally fair. I'm debating I'm curious if I just take Washington and Toronto out of my lineups. I know how to do it in the optimizer to just mitigate it, build a few stacks, and then take them out of the player pool forever. I have not tried that here with the Sims tool, so I may not be quite as adept with it while I'm on the show, while I'm talking, while I'm trying to set up lineups here. So we'll see what happens when that comes out. Who do you have for your home run of the earlier slate?
Man, I'm going to go with the guy you brought up a little earlier, Ryan Jeffers.
Okay.
I mean, I'm going to call him out for the home run, but also call him out a second time for DFS purposes. You just don't really see catchers leading off like this. Fair price point. I think he's one of the best one-off plays on the slate. He'll get ownership, but I don't think it's anything where I'm like afraid of, because both Contreras brothers will also get ownership. Catcher actually is really, really deep across the majors if you look at it. Much, much deeper than it was 3-4 years ago.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you've got guys like Keibert Ruiz just there.
Right.
Travis d'Arnaud, hey, he's the backup catcher because the other guy got hurt for Atlanta.
You just look at the top guys like Adley Rutschman, Will Smith, the Contrerases. Like, William Contreras has been one of the best hitters in the majors this year. Will Smith continues to be so. Rutschman, we know how good he is. It's really, really loaded. That's not even counting the young guys like Gabriel Moreno, etc.
Yeah. So here's what I'm doing. So I'm looking at the schedule. There's just the 1 o'clock game, right? So I'm making this just fine. There, for those wondering, so that it's easy enough to go through and just filter out the teams that have locked players in your CSV, or just hitting the players. Like, if you're worried about X player not being in a particular game, and because there's only one game locking, that's not going to, I'm going to have tons of rosters that just have nobody locked. So it's easy enough to go in and find those, just clear out those lineups and rebuild something. So that's what I'm going to be doing here. So I feel a little more confident about that. Plus the buying of time the 4 o'clock games are the weather games, right? So we have, and technically, I guess Oakland is a bit of a potential weather issue. The rain's not going to be there, but there could be, depending on how half-assed they do their field. I don't think it's going to be an issue, but we never know with Oakland, because remember they had a delay when their sewage backed up into the dugouts or in the locker rooms. So sorry, Oakland fans, you deserve better. Let's look at our featured slate here. So the 6-gamer going off at 6:40 on DraftKings and FanDuel, and then Yahoo is going with the 5-gamer at 7:10. So of course that game that they're leaving off on Yahoo is the Batters of Birdland in Cincinnati taking on Andrew Abbott. If you read the Spotlight Pitchers and Top Stacks article, I said take the under of 5.5 strikeouts there on Abbott. Abbott has good strikeout stuff, but he doesn't always get strikeouts, and he does allow home runs. That's not helpful in the Great American Small Park. 2 of his last 3 games, he has allowed a pair of home runs. He's at a palatable price point that you can go to him as an SP2 on DraftKings, but I do like the under on his home run prop. Kind of the pitchers here. Christian Scott, he's up. He's making his debut. He's got the two first name thing going for him, so that's always fun. He's going against the Rays. We've sadly talked about how the Rays magic is kind of gone. What do you think about Christian Scott? Because he is 25 on Yahoo. He's at the absolute minimum. 75 on DK. 60. I think 67 or 63 on FanDuel. How do you feel about him making his debut?
Yeah, he looks really, really good. I mean, anytime you're getting a guy like this at the bare minimum, I think you just play him. Tampa, we know, has upside, and they got going yesterday, but this team strikes out a ton. Not worried about their offense. I think you just play him and move on.
All right. For those wondering, the Sims loves Clark Schmidt today, giving me 45%. So I am going to back that down to about 30, but that will give me some flexibility here. I'm liking what everything else is doing. Awful lot of Eloy Jimenez. That poor guy just can never stay healthy. If you go look at for how many years he's been in the league, like 6 years, and I think he's only 27 or 28, he has missed so many games.
Yeah, he has so many games.
Yeah. And you just you're like, what a lost cause that poor guy has been. So in any event, all right, let's get some of these stacks done. Who else at the top of the pitching here? Options for that the evening action.
So you've got an interesting dichotomy with Tyler Glasnow being far and away the top pitcher on the slate. I mean, it's Tyler Glasnow, one of the top DFS pitchers in all the land, but facing Atlanta. So if this were last year, I'd be very, very hesitant to play Glasnow. Atlanta's offense, while many of the names are the same, isn't quite as good as last year, and they're striking out a lot more. So, yeah, man, I think Glasnow is the clear top option. Certainly a lot scarier than he normally might be because it's Atlanta. And if all of a sudden he's a little bit off, Atlanta is the type of team that will really make you pay. But presuming he's on his A stuff, I think he looks really, really good here. Is Christian Scott not in the DK pool?
He is. You can get to him.
Okay. Is he? Look, I'm just not showing him in our tools right now.
They may have done a late ad. That's a good call out, because now I want to see if he's in there, because we are missing that. That would not be good. Doopy-doopy-doo. I will send a message to them, but he didn't come through. He didn't come through in the first data pull. We'll get that fixed before the end, because that's the later, so you don't have to worry about it as much now. I'm sure it's a back end issue, so we'll get that taken care of. But good call out there. I'll follow up on that. Let me write a note to myself. Do you see? You got the little sticky pad here. I'm writing a note to talk to projections. Okay. What about late night stacks?
Oh yeah. Well, I just wanted to. So yeah, I had looked through Slate earlier. Yeah, I missed him even in the DK pool. So he is in there. You're right. He's too cheap there. I mean, 7,500. He looks great. His numbers last year were dominant. So yeah. he looks like the best pitcher everywhere you can get to him tonight. Just at that price, I obviously like Glass now a lot. As far as stacks go, is that what you asked me?
Yes.
I think it kind of looks similar to the early slate in that like nothing really stands out. Baltimore against Andrew Abbott. Baltimore is really good, but I don't know. Like they don't profile as well against lefties. Abbott's good. Like he was really good last year. He's got very live stuff. He gave up 4 runs to the Rangers in the first inning last start and then was dominant after that. So I like Baltimore, but I don't think they really stand out over the Dodgers and the Rangers. If I had to pick one stack I like the most, probably the Rangers. They're similar to Boston in that they're really good against righties, not so much against lefties. I don't love Texas here, but I like them enough. I don't think Waka is that great. I don't hate Kansas City against Dunning. I don't love that either. Dunning has been pretty impressive so far this year. There aren't offenses that really stand out. Maybe the Reds against John Means. Do you have a stronger take than me?
For me, it's the Texas Rangers essentially, and I wrote them up and basically just saying, aside from Josh Jung, the rest of the Rangers are available. It's a deep lineup. They have the luxury of putting Wyatt Langford in the back end there, so for less pressure filled at bats. That Marcus Semien, Corey Seager, Nate Lowe, Adolis Garcia, and catcher Jonah Heim have each played in an all-star game or won a Silver Slugger or both in the last 2 seasons. So that is high marks there. And then you've got youngsters, Evan Carter and Josh Smith, who should be in the lineup with the platoon advantage. You've got Leody Taveras there at the bottom of the order. He's a switch hitter, capable hitter, just a forever 9-hole hitter, but he's perfectly fine for stacks. Plus, helps as part of a wraparound stack because the thought would be, hey, if he's on base, and then he's got the Hardley order coming up behind him, so it helps him with runs, and he can nab a bag every now and then. So I feel pretty good about them. The Waka thing is he's been on, it's funny, I think it's 6 teams in the last 6 years. That includes his final season with the Cardinals, but he's had 1-year stints each of the last 5 years. In his last 50 starts, 50 starts, only 7 times has he allowed more than 5 earned runs or more. So he doesn't get blown up. He does an okay of limiting power, but the strikeouts are no longer there. His walks are trending up. His ground balls don't save him. Basically, he's the guy you plug in your rotation and he makes 25 to 30 starts a year. He keeps you in ball games, right? There's nothing wrong with that. A perfectly valuable asset to have, but it's not overly exciting. So I put that slight bit of caution out there in that he's not bad. He's not as good as he was when he was with the Cardinals, but he's not bad. The other thing you want to know, it's going to be in the mid-60s, and there's a 10 to 15 mile an hour breeze coming in from left field. So the Rangers will make their own luck here. I'm totally comfortable with that, and their talent should win. I mean, the World Series champions. Come on, what else can we say about them? But I want to caution it because it's not like Waka is a gas can. He's just going to get knocked around and probably last 5 innings and give up 4 runs. So... anything else you want to mention for either?
Well, just on that point, there are no gas cans on this slate. I mean,
yeah,
Bryce Elder's not great, but he was an all-star last year, so like clearly is not a gas can. I guess the Dodgers ultimately would be the top stack on the board. Now they're also the most popular stack, and the top of their lineup is going to be uber popular because Bryce Elder's not great. But I don't think he's bad. So like this slate doesn't have. The first slate doesn't have a ton of bad pitching. This slate, while it doesn't have great pitching, doesn't have any bad pitching at all.
Here's a good question here. Someone asking about how do you feel about the under first 5 innings? So that's a bet I don't do all that often, but under 4.5 for the Blue Jays games, first 5 innings. So the strategies around first 5 inning bets is if your team has a bad bullpen or it's like a good pitcher, but they're only going to be around for 4 or 5 innings, right? And then you're like, okay, well, I want to put my money on that. but I don't want the variance and craziness that can happen later. So they're intriguing wagers. I don't have a strong lean one way or the other. I would take the under. Just know that it could be a tough one there with the weather. And we know the Nationals historically have screwed around with what they do with postponements and delays and canceling games when there is.
It does look like there is an upgrade in that weather, though. Like,
Okay.
I think that it looks better now than it did. Sorry to
Looks
interrupt
better,
you.
but that doesn't mean the Nationals are going to play it that way with a good pitcher on the other side. So it's tiny word of caution. Now it's the mythology of the Nationals. They've done it 3 or 4 times where they've just been assholes about it. But I would take the under on that one. The other one that's interesting to think about is first inning, yes or no first inning run. So if you guys if you go to Odd Shopper, and you'll get a lot of tweets and videos from one of our guys, Nate. He lives for those, and he does a really good job. And like last year, I think he ended up with like a 10 or 11% ROI on those bets, which, it doesn't seem like, that's a 10% ROI. That's good. It's really, really good. And he does a lot of parlays where he'll pick 2 of them. He'll do them single and then he'll parlay them together. And he's had quite a bit of success. Follow him. I retweet him a fair amount. I just can't think off the top of my head what his Twitter account is. I'll look at that. Do you have any home run calls while I'm looking at what Nate's Twitter
For the main slate, for the night slate?
Yeah, for the night slate.
Yeah, let's go with let's go with our boy Evan Carter.
Oh, you actually stole mine.
Wow, that's crazy.
That is so. I'll just turn around and go with. I'll go with Smith. Seager feels a little bit rich. I'll go with Smith. I will drop Nate's. So it's Nathan Joyce. I will drop his Twitter there into YouTube. But if you follow him, he does a ton of stuff behind the scenes, and then he also does a lot of work with Odd Shopper. I want to mention Odd Shopper as well. That is the counterpart here to Stochastic. You can get in for $14.95 per week or $49.95 per month. That gets you the market-based wagering opportunities. It supports all the pick'em sites. It supports every sports book that is even remotely popular, including Hard Rock, which is available in Florida and New Jersey. So that's on there, but it's a great tool. But if you look at the Odd Shopper site, you'll see a lot of articles or pop-up things there from Nate. Eton Shander does a bunch of stuff. Josh and Ben and Eric and Greg all put content over there that is related to sports wagering and such, and they cover a lot of different strategies. But no and yes run first inning is something that they do a lot. Those are very popular bets. So it's fun to look at. I think it's a coin flip, but every now and then I'll land on one and be like, oh, I feel strongly about this one. Usually once we get to the dog days of summer, then I'm making those wagers because, well, they also have them on the pick'em sites, which is another fun wrinkle. But when I have a little more time to study it and check it out, I like that. But I think that's going to do it for us. So hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. We are closing in on 98,000 subscribers. We appreciate all of you watching here on a Saturday. We will be back at 6:30 for NBA Live Before Lock. The game one game slate. It is Minnesota in Denver taking on the defending champion Nuggets. Nuggets are 3.5 or 4.5 point favorites, depending on your side of choice. Should be a fun one to break down. So we've got you guys for that. And then, of course, we have all the tools and everything covering the rest of the baseball today. And MMA is going on today as well. NASCAR tomorrow, NHL tonight. So we got you covered. Follow Matt on Twitter at Fantasy Tips Matt. I am at EMac DFS. And, of course, it is Stochastic _ CON. With that, gamers, good luck.